Okay, now we really are going to try this again. Once again, hello, good afternoon. I am DeQuay Wilson, your announcer on the Wave Your Grades Motivational Talk program, featuring American students dedicating academic excellence to American veterans and our veterans thanking our students for being serious about their education. Your Wave Your Grades program is brought to you by the Norman Group. Uh, with our very special guest. Here is our Wave Your Grades host, civilian, and Education Hall of Famer, Carl Boyd.
Thank you so very much. Today is a Saturday, May 23rd, and on Saturday, May 23rd, we have a very special program, and it starts with Jackson County Prosecutor Gene Peters Baker. We're talking about general elections coming up November 3rd, primary August 4th, and it is our honor and our pleasure to welcome to the program Gene Peters Baker. Thank you very much for being on with us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and to hear from you, and for the very few who do not know, please give us your personal and professional background, if you would.
Well, my name is Jean Peters Baker, a mouthful, but I am your prosecutor, the prosecutor for Jackson County, Missouri. And I carry a few other hats. One is I'm a chair. It's the year of the chairwoman, perhaps, Mr. Boyd. I don't know if maybe I should announce all of those. but
Please go right ahead.
this has been the year where I have been selected to lead a few other important groups. But my primary role is Jackson County prosecutor.
Well, one of the questions that we have for you is how you got into the prosecutor's office. What was your motivation and your reason for feeling passionate about remaining in this office?
That's a good question. It was a long time ago. so
Okay.
one has to, reevaluate and continue to learn and grow in their job. And I started in this job in 1996, December 30th, 1996. I remember it well because I was an intern back then. I was still in law school, and I was just about as excited as anybody can be to have to pay for parking and to have an internship where my closet it was an office, but it was a closet, and I was pretty sure it looked like a closet, even though there was a chair in there. But it was good enough for me.
Absolutely.
So it was a pretty awesome beginning, and my office today is better than that closet office, but it's still a really wonderful job and one that I love, and it is an opportunity for me to know victims, to learn more new ways I can represent them and carry their issues effectively through a courtroom. And then I would broaden that category to community and to figure out how to carry community views into those courtrooms to represent people. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I want to keep doing it.
Did you mention whether or not you are indeed a Kansas City native?
Oh, no, I did not. But I am not a Kansas City native. I am about a 30-year native now of Kansas City.
Wow.
But I grew up on a farm, and in a very poor working farm. But those are my roots, and but Kansas City has been my home for the better part of 30 years.
When I think about someone who is representing the legal field, there are any number of approaches and or avenues that might be taken. For Gene Peters Baker, why the prosecutor's side of legal matters?
Yeah, there's a simple answer to that for me. The prosecutor is that person in the courtroom that represents everybody. Um, I don't represent the defendant that I charge, of course, the same way that a defense attorney does. But I am the one in the courtroom that has to represent everyone. What I mean by that is, of course, I represent victims to the degree that I do that. I represent the interest of the state of Missouri. And as an officer of the court, as a prosecutor, I also have to ensure that the defendant's rights are not violated, that we are adhering to all those principles of my office, but of criminal justice. And and that's the relationship that we have with a judge as well. So the prosecutor is the only one in the courtroom that represents all interest rather than one singular interest. And that's what I love about it. We get to really make a difference. It is the prosecutor that decides whether or not a case should be charged or not. It is the prosecutor that decides, whether or not there's going to be a plea offer and what that plea offer ought to be, and whether or not a diversion is appropriate, and whether or not we should seek that diversion. So it is a really powerful job. I am very mindful of that power. It's a power that you must make sure it's tempered by having a lot of other people in your life that keep you understanding how to use it and wield it, so that you're doing it in the best interest of victims and a community at large. I don't think there's a better legal job, Mr. Boyd, than being a prosecutor. I will, there are wonderful legal jobs out there, but there's none better than being a prosecutor. And I know that to be true because the number of people that come and go through the prosecutor's office keep in touch with me and tell me, wow, that was the best job I ever had, even if it was 20 years ago they had it, because it's true. It's an awesome, awesome job.
When I introduced today's program, I indicated that this is Saturday, May 23rd. Saturday, May 23rd, 2020, as history records what we were going through at that time when looking back from that future. Just interested in finding out what your office sees as most crucial issues, some of them perhaps dependent upon being in a pandemic situation, but even outside of that, how would you characterize what is very crucial for your office in this time?
The pandemic has been, for every person and every industry, something new that's thrown at us that we've had to pivot with and try and figure out how to continue to do our job in light of these new concerns. So prosecutors are not any different than anyone else in that regard, and we've been able to to pivot pretty well. And so I've learned a few things from this. But the pandemic is not, I think, it does not compare to the epidemic of violence that has been a heavy weight for the city, not for 5 years, not for 10 years, but for something close to 40 years now. And I am one of those that I'm not hopeless about violence, because I've watched, studied, and learned from other cities about how they steered themselves out of violence. I know it's possible. I know it's possible for Kansas City because we, in fact, did it in 2014 and in 2015. But here we are. We are at the highest levels of violence this city has ever seen, and we must come together, much more broadly to partner our way through this one too. So while we're in a very tough time, it's not impossible, and I am not hopeless that this cannot be done. There's a lot that could be done, but it takes police and prosecutors and every other entity possible of working together. And we really have got to find a way, police and prosecutors to bring community into that fold, into that discussion. And we need to allow public health experts to lead us through change in this area. Just like we are really doing with COVID, right? We are allowing the public health experts to be the experts. That needs to be done in the criminal justice realm as well.
When Gene Peters Baker says we, as it relates to our needing to come together, how would you define who that we is, are?
Yeah, I will define we very broadly, and much more broadly than I even did in 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So as I mentioned, in 2014, Kansas City was one of those cities that steered ourselves out of violence in a dramatic way. It was an all-time low for Kansas City, over about 4 decades. It was an amazing period of time. And then 2015, by the end of 2015, we started losing those numbers, and it started driving ourselves in the wrong direction again. However, what I learned from that effort in 2014 is there were some of our shortcomings were community did not have an adequate role at that table. Now, we thought we had, partnered with everyone possible back in 2014, and that was when Chief Forte and I worked on an effort called No Violence Alliance together. And we brought in, of course, the usual suspects, but we thought we really opened the door wider to include social workers and probation and parole, and to add an arm of this effort, a strong arm that focused on changing behaviors, not through a heavy-handed legal enforcement system, but through an offer of help, through real services. And I think what I've learned from 2014 and that effort was we did not have community stakeholders at the table the way we needed to. So to go back to that system again, that I would require that must happen, that the community must have a as big a role as the prosecutor has, and as the police chief has, and as probation and parole has. We need the community at our table in that way.
As a matter of fact, you have alluded to, if not answered, my next question, but let me preface it by saying that our program is blessed to be on KUAW, excuse me, .org. It is an internet station. We are housed at the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center, and we get an opportunity to speak to a constituent base that is somewhat particular. When Gene Peters Baker appeals to the community, and since you have already said it must be a community effort, how can we do a better job of both appealing to the community, and then what would that appeal include that might motivate more people to become involved?
So that is a $1 million question, Mr. Boyd, and I thank you for asking it.
You're
I
welcome.
do have some strong opinions about that. I believe the way community has been spoken to in the past, and maybe sometimes presently, about this issue is through a little bit of a finger point. The finger point is, why don't you come forward? Why don't you tell us what you know? Why, just trying to really attack the non-snitching culture. And I think those are the wrong questions to ask. That's the wrong kind of hand to reach out. What must happen is maybe a more curious question. And the more curious question is, why? Why don't you want to tell us who shot you? Why don't you want to help law enforcement solve your case? Why, if you were just a witness, why don't you want to become involved? And if we ask that question with a real curiosity to hear the answer, then maybe we could start turning that component around. But you cannot finger point and blame, and I just refuse to be in that state of mind of blaming and finger pointing. We have got to go to community in a new way that says, how can I help you? What problem do you have that I might be able to solve so that you could help police solve your case, so that I could help get justice on your case? But until we ask it that way, with a genuine, I want to know what harms you, I want to know how to help you, I want to hear the answer, I want to know, I want you to explain to me how I can get through a layer of distrust rather than a finger point and a blame. I think that is just the wrong approach. It's the wrong message. And you know what you're going to get, when you approach someone with a finger point.
Well, one of the things that you just did was lead me to what might be my final question of you before I ask if you have particular things that you want to say is this. When you were talking about the necessity for that cooperation, I am just wondering whether or not there are individuals and or entities you would like to cite who are especially helpful in getting us to a point of moving in the right direction for cooperation.
Yeah, absolutely. There are several. So I don't want to just, be focusing on the negative here, because Kansas City has a lot going for it. We have, I now oversee a combat tax, and that combat tax does a lot of good. You've heard some negatives about it, but there's a lot of good that comes out of combat. So combat funds a variety of organizations, although these organizations get funding from multiple sources. But combat funds agencies like Ad Hoc Group Against Crime, though they have other funding sources as well. We're not their main funder. They are a great community partner. They are a great entity that lifts the community up. They're not alone. There's Center for Conflict Resolution. There's Mothers in Charge. We have a variety of resources for people to seek help, and also a place to go if they don't want to go directly to the police. These are places perhaps they feel safer to go to report information. And I think we should really also talk about the good things that Kansas City has going for it, because not all cities have that kind of resource. And because I do have the opportunity in the position that I have, and as I serve as chair for the Association of Prosecutors, which is like the 40 biggest jurisdictions around the United States, I get to see what others are doing, and I get to see what a gem this particular resource is, and how we get to fund community service organizations that really can make a difference and are making a difference in this community. So I want to really lift those agencies up. And there are others, I named just a few, but there are others that build that kind of trust in the system, where historically, and even, historically doesn't mean you have to go back 50 years. Presently, there are a lot of tensions in the criminal justice system in regard to race. And those are fair and they're accurate. And in order to really address those, we really need to have some other community partners that are at the table in a more trusted role, to be that organization that can open that dialogue and open the conversation for people in a safe way. Because I want this community to believe that this system is there for them, that no matter where no matter where a crime occurs, they deserve justice, and they should see it and feel it. They should understand that that system is for them. And if they ever doubt that, which there is doubt about that, then we need other organizations that can step into that divide and help mend it and heal it. That's my main goal. That's my main effort. It's what I'll do until my very last day doing this job, is trying to achieve and mend those ends, and how to make this system better, how to make it safer, but also how we can go to groups that have not felt the justice of of the criminal justice system. In fact, they've felt the complete opposite. How to bring them into the system, showing them it's a system that can be for them and work for them, that it is theirs.
Well, in our close, as it relates to your time with us, please say what you don't want to go to the parking lot and say, I wish I had said, and give contact information if you would.
Well, I guess I don't want to go to a parking lot and think I should have said this to Mr. Boyd. That's inevitable, Mr. Boyd. I always think of my best arguments when I'm in the parking lot in the car. But here's what I would say. Leaders don't blame. Leaders don't finger point. Leaders lean in to a problem and they work through it. And they also deliver hope along the way. And they reach out to broader coalitions to help bring people together. That is what Kansas City has for it. That is a piece of what I can deliver, and I want to keep trying to deliver that better and better and better and better, because we need that now. We need it now. We don't need to hear from someone who will finger point. We need to hear from people who will lift up and who will help us get out of this high rates of violence. It is possible. We've seen it. I've seen it, and we can be there again. So that's, I guess, I needed to say that, I guess, before I'm in the parking lot.
Okay, we appreciate that so very much. If someone wants to get in touch with Jean Peters Baker, how would we do that?
You can get in touch with me through a variety of means. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. Facebook, but the best way is to send me an email at jpetersbaker@jacksongov.org. I like it when you give me your name, and so that we can work through a real issue together. I respond to all my emails. I respond to all my own calls. I send out my own tweets. So I am available and would love to hear from people.
Thank you so very, very much, Jean Peters Baker. And again, your tenure in office, how long have you been Jackson County prosecutor?
I received the head banana job in 2011 and has since been reelected to that position, and I'm up for reelection again in 2020.
Thank you so very, very much. Don't be surprised if we call on you again. Thank you for being with us on this day on Wave Your Grades.
Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
You're more than welcome. This is Wave Your Grades, KUAW.org. You have heard from Jackson County Prosecutor Jean Peters Baker. That is J. Peters Baker at jackson.gov. And as we go along with our program, we will take just a moment to indicate who brings you the program, and we will have another very special guest in the second half hour of today's Wave Your Grades program. Let's see now.
Well, Wave Your Grades is brought to you by the Norman Group. For more information on becoming a partner or learning to bridge the 5 wealth gaps, please contact Willie Norman at wnorman2@att.net or give him a call at 816-525-8708. Now back to our host, Carl Boyd.
Thank you so very, very much. We are back on Wave Your Grades. And as a matter of fact, unfortunately, we have seen a wave in the greater Kansas City area, more particularly in Kansas City itself, of crime that has occurred over the past week. We are pleased to have as very special guests Jean Peters Baker, who is currently Jackson County prosecutor. We are about to have the pleasure now of speaking with Tracy Chappelle, who is the Republican candidate for that office in November 2020, and that primary will be coming up in August. And it looks like we have with us at this time on Wave Your Grades, Tracy Chappelle. Are you with us?
Yes, I am with you, Mr. Boyd. How are you this afternoon?
Fantastic, but I'll get better. How are you this afternoon?
I'm really good. I'm thankful for the weather.
Absolutely.
Thought we never get here.
Absolutely. You are not alone, and there are people in the studio who are agreeing with you. And by the way, for those of you who are listening, please know that those of us who are in the studio are masked. We are safe distance apart. Louis George Walker, founder of KUAW.org, has all of the cleaning supplies and materials, and as close as we all are, we are taking seriously what is going on. So that to our regular listeners, and today is a very special program, Tracy Chappelle. I was pointing out that we have had an unfortunate week just behind us, unfortunately, but ahead of us, we have an election. You are a candidate. So let's find out for our listeners to whom we speak this afternoon something of your personal and professional background.
Well, I will start with my professional background. First of all, it's Tracy Chappell. I am currently the prosecutor in the city of Blue Springs, Missouri, where I was appointed to this position by Mayor Carson Ross. Currently, we're starting to see cases that were normally handled in state court, but now we're starting to see those cases more in municipal courts, such as drive-by shootings and domestic violence cases that really don't belong there. But I am handling those cases as the prosecutor in the city of Blue Springs. In addition to that, I have my own private law firm where I practice in the area of criminal defense and civil litigation. So I've had the opportunity as a criminal defense counsel to handle cases such as first-degree assault, armed criminal actions. I've second-chaired a murder case. I've dealt with child abuse cases, sexual assault cases, drug cases. So I've had a myriad of experience on the criminal defense side. In addition to that, I've had the opportunity to serve Jackson County by working in the county counselor's office as a senior assistant county counselor. What it was my duty to advise the various department heads on legal matters, including work in giving legal advice to the prosecutor's office. So my experience is well-rounded. As a prosecutor and as a criminal defense attorney, I get to see every angle of that office of the Jackson County prosecutor. I get to see where the holes are at from the criminal defense side. And then on the other side, I see why a person would prosecute. So in a nutshell, I do have a myriad of experience. And on a personal level, I am a mom. I have 4 boys. I call them the J Crew. So I have a Joseph, a Jacob, a Josiah, and a Joshua. And the Joshua in the Bible really lives up to his name. And I am married. I'm happily married. And so that's pretty much my personal background.
Wow. And by the way, when you began, thank you very much for pronouncing your last name. I introduced you as Tracy Chappelle. It is Tracy Chappell.
Yes.
And in giving us your background, one of the things that I'd be interested in is just kind of where you grew up. Are you a native? Our veteran Marine in Blue Springs is a very good friend of ours in the program, Carson Ross.
Yeah.
But are you native to this community, or are you, as I am, a transport from other geography?
I am a transport from Alabama. I was originally born in a small town called Aldridge, Alabama, which was really started out as a little, it's not even really a city, so to speak, just really one of those little small towns that was known for coal mining. And then I moved to a city called Alabaster, where I stayed until I graduated from high school, and then went off to college. And then I came to Kansas City, Missouri for law school. So I am a transporter, but when I got here, I loved it so much that I thought I'm never going back. I'm never
Wow.
leaving, and that's much to the dismay of my parents because they want to see the grandkids at every cost. But I'm here
No
because it's
doubt.
where I love, and so I tell them they have to be here as well.
Well, now, one of the immediate questions for anyone interested in your candidacy, and now I guess I can say beyond Jacob, Josiah, Joshua, and who did you say? Jacob, Josiah,
Joseph,
Joshua.
Jacob, Josiah, and Joshua. Yes.
Yes. Beyond that, your reason for running for the Jackson County Prosecutor's Office in this community.
Mr. Boyd, the office of the Jackson County Prosecutor is a very powerful office. That office gets to determine when to prosecute and when not to prosecute and how to charge individuals for crimes. I saw firsthand how the misuse of that power sent a man to prison and completely destroyed his family. Mr. Boyd, that left a chilling effect on me. And it made me say we have to be smarter on crime and not tougher, because being tougher on crime has led to mass incarceration on both the local and a state level. And as your next Jackson County prosecutor, I intend to reduce that mass incarceration by eliminating the cash bail system for those low-level nonviolent offenders. In addition to that, I intend on extending and creating more diversion programs for those low-level nonviolent offenders. I will not prosecute cases that have where there's involving a possession of less than 100 grams of marijuana, and I will bring back preliminary hearings. Now, all of these things put together, they're going to decrease mass incarceration, and it's also going to drive down the overcrowding in the Jackson County Detention Center. You know, I know you talked about my kids being one avenue of why I run, but I also run for those reasons as well. That power, when you find it and it has been abused, when it leaves that chilling effect on you, that is something that I, as your next prosecutor, I don't want any other defendant to be able to go through something like that. The role of the prosecutor is not only to convict the guilty, but you also have to protect the innocent. And if you know that an individual is innocent, you cannot use your power just to convict, to create that culture of win at any cost. So that's why I run, and that's why I say we have to be smarter on crime and not just tougher.
When we think in terms of why one runs, it does indeed lead to the very next question, which is, from your perspective, what are the most crucial issues we're facing, in your opinion, at this time?
Mr. Boyd, I would say that I'm going to be generous and say the last 72 hours.
Ooh.
But in Kansas City, it has been it's been a war zone.
Yes.
We are fifth in the nation for gun violence and firearm fatality rates. That is very pressing right now in our community. The domestic violence cases are on the rise. We have to deal with mental health issues. And under my leadership, I am going to, number one, expand our mental health programs and court programs to really assist those individuals who have mental health illnesses, as opposed to leaving them or just leaving them in our Jackson County jail where they're not getting treatment, they're not getting screening, they're treated like other individuals, and they should not be. Okay? And then as it deals with the violence, I am a firm believer that we have to get into the community and build trust with those individuals. It is not enough that police officers are around the community that's most that is more often than not affected, but they have to be in the community, working with individuals, building trust with individuals. So people know that they can call the police or they can call on their prosecutor and know that they're going to get assistance. So we have to build those bridges so that we can have a safer community, not just for my children, not just for me or my husband or my neighborhood, but for every community. Because every community deserves not to, they can go to sleep at night and not hear gunfire popping off, all times of the night. They deserve that. And so those are crucial issues that must be addressed in our community.
One of the things that my next question allows me to do is once again to thank KUAW.org, that is KUAW, Knowledge, Understanding, and Wisdom, the internet radio station housed at the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center. And as we, on our Wave Your Grades program, continues to thank Brother Walker and this station, we know that we would like to use it to communicate to our constituent base, who are our listeners. The question it leads me to is, how does Tracy Chapel intend to, and as a matter of fact, how are you currently helping, motivating, and empowering the community to help us go in the direction that you desire?
As of now, it is my desire to deal with, when we talk about the community, and I will speak first and foremost because I have school age or teenage kids, sons. I identify with their kids. My husband, well, let me stop for a second. I identify with their friends because I need to know from their friends what is going on. It is your particular age group, that age group from 16 roughly to about 24, that are committing crimes. I need to know from you, what did you miss in life? What are you not getting? What can we do as adults to be able to assist you in moving towards a better, making better decisions in your life? So I use my kids as a platform. I use their friends as a platform to try to gauge how I can assist them so that they can go on to college and they can have a productive life. And Mr. Boyd, I will tell you, if we don't get in the community and continue to talk to individuals as I am currently doing and asking those real questions and not sitting on the fringes and waiting for a healthcare expert to tell me what's going on, or waiting for, another government official to tell me what's going on. I have to be, as I am, in the community, asking those tough questions so that I can make their answers part of my platform so we can give these communities the life that they deserve to live, which is, once we build bridges, we have a community that is safe to live in. The same that I want for my kids, that's what they also want for theirs.
Without a doubt, in as much as you have experience as it relates to both sides of the office, both sides of prosecutorial duties, as well as defending suspects, and in some cases, perhaps perpetrators. When we think in terms of trends and what you have seen, does this current era, because I just don't want to blame what has happened over these past 72 hours that you cite on COVID-19, but as it relates to the elephant in the room, or the rhinoceros in the nursery, or the gorilla in the garage, COVID-19 is with us, it's on us. Does this have any particular implications where what you are pursuing is concerned?
What I'm pursuing, Mr. Boyd, and I will tell you, part of my platform is to lower or reduce mass incarceration.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to COVID-19,
Wow.
that should have forced this current administration to look at the way that individuals are housed in the Jackson County Detention Center in a different manner. And let me explain. One of my issues is, one of my points in my platform in reducing mass incarceration on a local and a state level is to end the cash bail system, which essentially means that those individuals who cannot afford bail, but they're nonviolent, they don't have to stay in jail to wait for their trial. They can go, whether they're going home or wherever they're going, but they would not be in the Jackson County Detention Center waiting for trial. This has the added benefit, actually, of relieving the taxpayers from being able to or having to pay for these individuals while they sit in jail. COVID-19, when that occurred, we had about 3 staff members, I think it was three staff members and 2 inmates who had the illness. And when you start looking at it a little bit different, it's, a lot of those individual inmates were actually released because they were nonviolent offenders. And I take the stance as your next prosecutor to say, if we can release them under the duress of COVID-19, then we can also release them when COVID-19 is not in place. Because as the taxpayers, we don't want to put the burden on them of having to pay for individuals when they are really not a threat to the community at all. So in a sense, COVID-19 really allowed everyone, or at least it should have, to take a look or rethink the way that we incarcerate individuals.
Now, let me do something that I did not do at the beginning of the program, and that is to give the number just in case. Well, as a matter of fact, Brother Walker, I don't know if they can call in at the same time that someone is on the phone, so I won't do that, as a matter of fact. One of the things, but you said they can post on Facebook any responses, okay, and or questions that they might have. But as it relates to what you have said, very astute remarks, particularly as it pertains to engaging young people, we have a tendency as elders to tell young people what they're thinking rather than to ask them. And as you have indicated with your sons, their peers, and others, you engage that interaction. Who else should be on your team, as it were, from a community perspective, and or who would you like to compliment for what they're doing in the community?
I will tell you who else needs to be on the team. You have to have teenagers. That's first and foremost. You need them because these are the individuals that are more often than not that are affected. You need police officers because that is the other arm of the government that is going to help protect and serve our community. But they have to do so when they earn that trust of these young individuals. You need on your team a prosecutor like myself who is going to go out there and not be afraid of the communities in which I serve, who's going to get in the trenches with these individuals and find out what is the real issue and incorporate that into my platform. You have to have the Jackson County Sheriff. You have to have the mayor on your team. This is a community effort. You need liaisons in every single community that can help the prosecutor's office know what's going on across the county. You have to plant people everywhere because we are a community and we will not stand for violence in our community where we're going to lay down, but we are going to formulate a team where we're going to stand up and say, you know what, at the end of the day, we're going to be safe. Our kids are going to be safe. Our kids are going to live to do what they need to do as adults, and that's to live a productive life. And that's how we're going to do that. Okay?
One of the things that we certainly do not want to get um, off of the program without indicating is how those who are interested can get in touch with Tracy Chapel.
They can go to tracychapel.com. That's TRACEY. Chapel is CHAPPELL.com. So tracychapel.com, or make the phone call to 816-533-3121. And the Facebook page is Tracy Chapel for Jackson County Prosecutor.
Okay, and as we draw to a close, want to make sure that you have the opportunity to say what you came to say and don't want to leave without making sure you get the opportunity to say what is most important to you.
I will say this. We have to change the way that we are prosecuting cases. When this is all said and done, we have to be smarter on crime and not tougher, because tougher has led us to be fifth in the nation for homicide and firearm fatalities. Being tougher has led us in this administration, us being eighth in 2017 for sending the most individuals to the Missouri Department of Corrections. Being tougher on crime has just, we have no real structure or no real trust in the community. So we have to be smarter and not tougher on crime. And we have to remember that above all else, as your next prosecutor, it must be justice above all. Thank you, Mr. Boyd.
Thank you very much, Tracy Chapel. This is Wave Your Grades, very special edition. We appreciate your being with us. And again, don't be surprised if we call on you again.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You do the same. This is Wave Your Grades, KUAW.org. We have had as our two very special guests in the wake of absolutely increased violence at what might be considered a peculiar time, and thinking that we are socially isolated with what has been going on with the pandemic, and yet being subjected to a wave of violence in the greater Kansas City community. And you've heard from Jackson County Prosecutor Jean Peters Baker, candidate for that office, Tracy Chapel. Now we will be getting ready in the near future, because it looks like we might have an opportunity to get back in touch with students with whom we have been engaged in some form or other, as there is an attempt to make schools somewhat normal from the departure that COVID-19 has presented for them, so that we will be having some young people who are, once again, dedicating excellence to those who have served. And let us, at Stutes for Boots, the parent entity sponsoring our Wave Your Grades program, helping those who are listening and our constituent base to know that this is a very important time for young people to get serious about study, because as we look to the future, not knowing what is likely to happen, these are the young people who are going to do two things. One, they're going to bear the brunt of the outcome of a pandemic. And two, they are the ones who are going to solve the issue. In as much as there was no way that we could have anticipated COVID 19 as recently as months ago. Imagine if the young people in America's public education system had been in the laboratories, had been responsive, had known something about trends, particularly as it relates to medicines and those kinds of things. It is very interesting to me, Sister DeQuay, that so often when Wanda and I would hear from people in the medical profession, you would hear a foreign voice oftentimes. And there are many from the Philippines, for instance, from India, for instance, from from Africa, for that matter, for instance, from other countries who have dealt with medicine to a larger degree than many of the American youngsters, particularly in underserved communities. That does not mean exclusively. There are people from out of the United States of America who come to MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, to study, to Johns Hopkins University, to Emory University. In fact, however, as it relates to a lot of personal doctors and people we go to see, so many of them don't look like us. Our prayer is that in the future, our young people, now being able to anticipate that something like this could happen, are studying not only harder, but with a sense of purpose. And the reason we say at Stutes for Boots and on this program, Wave Your Grades, please dedicate it to those who have served, is because it just does not make sense to fight wars for war's sake. We want our young people to study, but we want them to study war no more. We want them to feel like, listen, if you were willing to risk your very life, your safety in Afghanistan and in Iraq and wherever it might have been, then we are willing to study hard enough to not have to go in the future. Now you have COVID 19. If you never thought you had a purpose to study, in America, we have a purpose to study. And from our perspective, and please, young people, dedicate that study to those who have sacrificed for you. So that's what we are all about. One of the things we don't do often enough is explain Stutes for Boots. So the mission for Stutes for Boots is to have American educators and American students match our America's military with their excellence worldwide. STUTS is an acronym. It stands for Students Theater of Operations, the school. Just as our military has theaters of operation when they are on a mission, our mission says that the theater of operations for students is the school. Somebody says, but Brother Boyd, they're not in school now. Where is their theater of operations? When we talk about school, we're not just talking about a building. We're talking about wherever it is that you are matriculating and keeping up. And one of the things that young people can help us with is to teach us the technology, because if you do it to the degree that you do socially, help us help you do it academically. We thank so often KUAW.org. It stands for Knowledge, Understanding, and Wisdom. Some people may not know, but most of the people who listen to KUAW.org are aware that the Black Family Technology Awareness Association is very much engaged in closing the digital divide. That's very important where technology is concerned, and we encourage our young people to become involved in that and engage with those who indeed have served. So, future programs, when we say Students Theater of Operations, the school, it is wherever school is at this time, wherever school might be in the future, and you will be a very integral part of it. We thank Jean Peters Baker, Tracy Chappell, for being our very special guests on this program, and prayerfully we won't continue to have weeks like we have just had. But next week, our very special programs will feature our students and our veterans. And to close our program, here is your announcer and mine, DeQuay Wilson.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Your Wave Your Grades program is brought to you by the Norman Group. Again, for more information on becoming a partner or learning more to bridge the 5 wealth gaps, please give them a call, 816-525-8708, or send them an email at wnorman2@att.net.
Will you say that phone number again?
Absolutely, 816-525-8708, 816-525-8708. To close today's Wave Your Grades program, our host will recite one of his daily year-round morning motivational messages for students in honor of our troops. I am DeQuay Wilson. Here is Carl Boyd.
And please remember that you can find these daily quotes at stootsforboots.com, www.stootsforboots.com. And when you get there, page 2, after the home page, it says Morning Messages. We have 366 of them, one for every day. So here again, if young people would like to get back to having morning messages and you're not in school, go to the website, start your school day with a message such as this. And indeed, this is today's message to students across the USA. Your Students for Boots message for this day, May 23rd. If you cannot look back on a year of success, you must look forward to doing your best in honor of our troops. My name is Carl Boyd for Wave Your Grades, KUAW.org. Our announcer, engineer, co-host, and producer, DeQuay Wilson, the producer, engineer, and founder, Louis George Walker. Carl Boyd saying, gracious God and wonderful Wanda, I'm on my way home.